Hello? Okay, I think we'll get started in about a minute, so. Also, I'm sure you guys already know the drill by now, but please put questions in the Whova app and upvote other people's questions so we can have a more interesting Q&A about the things you want to talk about. But I will, yes?
Yeah, I would need your mic. This mic is.
Oh, is it not working? Okay, great. Well, I will hand it off to you guys.
Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Venki Nagar. I'm a professor here. I teach P&L leadership. How do you take firms to profitability, and also algorithmic thinking? How do you think of business in terms of computer science? So I have two very distinguished panelists. Gracelyn she's a computer scientist and an MBA from Chicago, and she is very interested in concentrated solar power, and she does both the data side and the people side. And Chowdhury is a former professor of computer science who is now a founder of a startup, an industrial decarbonization called Eugenie.ai. So please welcome the two panelists. So I was thinking that maybe we could start with both the panelists just introducing themselves briefly, and then they could give us a concrete rundown on the coolest thing they're both working on, so we can get super excited from the get-go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Gracelyn. Thanks for being here. So I don't know if this is the coolest, but I should explain to you concentrated solar a little bit, because I think I'm a recent grad of Booth, and it's a really interesting case study. So we all have heard about PV, photovoltaics, solar panels. They're pretty popular these days, actually so popular that we have too much power when the sun is out from them, and you have to do something called curtail them. So I was really interested in a mix of CS, had a lot of, I started working on LLMs in 2017, so I was lucky to be pretty early, making worse versions of ChatGPT for small firms. And I really wanted to help with environmental causes. So one of the things I thought was, let me think about how to bring some of my technical skills to bear on not lame duck exactly, but less popular technologies, right? How can we have a cost down curve that's going to be similar to something that we've seen for PV in a technology that isn't as pervasive yet? The long story short is that is very, very hard with mirrors that are taking the sunlight and trying to concentrate it back at a tower. There's a couple of installations in the US. They kind of look like the Eye of Sauron. So anyways, I think CSP is just a lovely thing as a business student if you want to go look at what are some of the really tried and true difficulties of bringing a really nice innovation all the way down to a cost that's going to allow it to scale. And so AI was a part of that story. I was leading some pretty complex algorithmic development to try and optimize those solar fields so that we could really minimize the cost of their install, as well as minimize the raw materials needed to install them. But at the end of the day, I think it's a cool story, less because it's such a pervasively adopted technology, and more because it's one of those really hard sort of moonshotty things. I think fusion is another thing that I would recommend folks look into if they're interested in sort of what's great about renewables, but also what can be really difficult.
Thank you. First of all, thank you ClimateCAP, Jaya, and Venki for inviting here, and thank you everyone for joining us here. I hope we'll get something out of this session. Climate and AI, two of the most emerging area. Probably we'll see a lot of innovations during our lifetime. And that's why we are so excited and want to share that. So I'm traveling from the Bay Area, so I wanted to make sure that I'm interacting with students, especially MBA students, because you are going to be the future leader. And I think this is an important time we are going through, and where if we can somehow inspire you to be part of this journey of climate, I think that's, for me, is going to be the takeaway message. And last 2 days, trust me, I had such a great time interacting with few of you. A lot of innovation, a lot of energy, a lot of thoughts about how you can add value to the overall ecosystem. That is inspiring me. Thank you again, Jaya, Venki, for inviting me. My name is Soudip. I'm the founder CEO of Eugenie.ai. We are helping asset-heavy organizations, manufacturing specifically, who are one of the major contributor to today's emissions in the world. And most of you know that emission is one of the major root cause behind climate change to reduce the emissions at source. So hopefully in the next 1 hour, I'll be trying to give you some inspiration how you can think in future when you will start your own company or you will work with other corporate, how you can leverage AI. So we are leveraging AI, of course, but how you can use AI differently so that you can also create impact to the environment, to the world.
So do you want to give a kind of a specific example of how you use AI in your company, and then both of you can have a conversation, because is the AI used more in a scientific manner, or is it more used to help the teams kind of build and share documents? There is so much human aspect of AI too, right? Because the teams are generating so much information. So is it science or organizational or both?
Yeah, thank you for asking that questions. It is both, of course. Without human, there is no AI. AI runs on human knowledge. It learns pattern that human has created, then from the knowledge that human has created, and then basis that it tries to automate and then augment human knowledge with some other knowledge, which individual human probably is not able to contextualize given the context. Well, AI or a machine has larger perspective because it is learning, mining knowledge from many humans like you, me, and others. And that's why it has a larger perspective. That's why AI is providing value to the existing business. Just to give an example, so we're working with third largest steel manufacturer in the world. So before us, they have been running their operations using standard operating procedures. I mean, that's the law of average. I mean, it's been designed from the law of average. You see different machines, the machine producers are seeing different machines under different conditions, and then basically that they say, this is the operating procedures with which you can run your machine. Obviously, that leaves a lot of scope for optimization given different contexts, and that's exactly where AI is augmenting the operating procedures or specific context in which certain parameters can be optimized. And that's what we are bringing to the table. And with that, we not only help them to improve their top line, say productivity by 15%, more production, at the same time reduce their emissions and wastage by 5 and 7% respectively. So it's a new way of rethinking your business using technology, and that can help world, business, and community to thrive together. So that's the new angle of AI.
Yeah, I think the point about more LLM, organizational development stuff is interesting too. I'm kind of curious, I imagine most of you have used ChatGPT or a derivative and found some joy and maybe kind of felt annoyed when it was lying to you a little bit and kind of the whole spectrum of emotion. I like to think about deep learning specifically. There's a phrase in the industry like garbage in, garbage out. And so just because most of you are business students, I'm imagining, I think just not being too rebuffed by the technical jargon at the offset, especially if you're in a meeting with a number of stakeholders and maybe there's a data team and maybe there's some very important decision maker in the room, allowing yourself to be the person who is just asking, does what we're discussing really make sense to me? From a full brain perspective, is the data that we think we used, and maybe the specifics of the ML algorithm don't matter as much from where you're sitting, but is the problem we're trying to solve well fit? Did we represent the problem really well with the data that we had collected and fed to this algorithm, to a set of deep learning models, whatever your ensemble structure is? There's a lot of value for the business thinking and the strategic angle of what are we doing here and putting it all together. So I've had the privilege of working in a bunch of really, really smart teams with world-class computer scientists, but there's really good examples too where, we were building AI to do fault detection in airplanes, and we forgot that there's actually a second engine on board. There's sometimes very, very big, we were so focused on solving this one problem that we didn't necessarily think as holistically about the strategy around it, and that's where specifically I think the business student skill set is really nice. And so yes, organizational tooling, all of the LLMs that you can use to make 10-minute tasks into 1-minute tasks, I think those also compound. But what Chowdhury is getting at is like there are also some very well fit, very specific, okay, we can collect this data, we can process it in a way that we think is well fit and accurate, and then we can get this insight that before, it would have taken kind of years to compute on. And yeah, the pace of the world is really caught up, and we can do stuff much faster now.
Just one more thing, like maybe to answer your question, just add up to what I said before. So other aspect of AI, so just before I give this answer, I want to get a sense of this room. How many of you are, just raise your hand, are just MBA student? All of you? Most of you? Okay. And ever worked with technology? Okay, good. Well, see, the thing is, at the end of the day, you can generate the best in-class AI. I mean, in our case, we generate recommendations real time using AI. But finally, who is going to act on it? Human. And, well, human can see those insight is, I don't know whether it will work or not, because I have experiential knowledge for 20 years. I've never done that. Why should I do it? Now, it's a responsibility of the technology, innovators to think why would a human adopt what I'm saying using AI? And if you're not building that fundamental basis, human psychology, why should they accept? So why do people talk about explainable AI? Because to explain to whom? To human, to what is going behind the scenes so that they can understand, decrypt, and act on it. So those are fundamental blocks, building blocks of how to build AI systems so that you can bring human along and can build human-computer collaborative systems rather than, I'm going to replace human. We are a little far off from there. Okay, I'll talk about that later on maybe. Yeah.
I mean, as an accountant, I'm so happy to hear these things because accounting people live on dimes and pennies, so a minute here, a minute there, a little bit of improvement in productivity here. I think that for us it's a huge thing because as both of you said, it compounds into something very big, right? So talking of going from the very small to very big, if you look back there is a big slide on the emissions breakdown. So do you want to just kind of completely switch gears and see how this thinking about small things, minute by minute, team by team, kind of how do you see this impacting like the big things that you think are very, very important?
Yeah, so I can go first. It's not a problem. So as you can see here, what is adding to the maximum? This is the EPA, it's US. We also have a world, chart where it is coming from, the emissions coming from. Which two industries do you see is contributing to the maximum? It's no-brainer, right? So the stat says so. Industrial operations and, I&U, travel, transportations is a big one. Now, how do you bring innovation which can scale up at that scale, right? Think of it, these are all gigatons of emission attribution every year. How do you stop it and then start bending? Like first stop, like bring it to normalcy so that IPC 1.5 degrees centigrade, we don't cross that. And then how do we bend the curve? So, and it's not that our world population is going down, it's going higher. So you have more demand, so you have to produce more. You have more people and, hopefully our livelihood is improving, so we'll have more cars. So none of these are going down anywhere, right? So now the challenge would be, how do we support increase in the number of, say, production line and number of vehicle at the same time reduce emissions coming from that? So there where innovation comes into picture. And first thing is, how do you build more efficient stuff? No-brainer, so that per unit emissions will go down. And then how do I build infrastructure to support, say for example, to power all of this? It requires energy, alternate sources of energy. These are two major innovations, I would say, area where today most of companies are thinking about, especially the climate innovators are thinking about. And AI is the mean, it's not the solution always, never. It's, where do you fit it? What Gracelyn said is like, don't think, oh, I need to be an AI company. No, I need to solve a problem in this, say, similar problem that can have a global scale impact. And to do that, do I need to use technology? Mostly yes. I mean, that answer would be definitely yes. Then do I need to use what kind of technology? Maybe in AI across, maybe AI in certain pockets, maybe beyond AI, other technology as well, right? So that's a decision that we have to make. But for sure, these two, whether it's transportation, commercial, residential industries, these are going to grow. All of this, the size will grow. Their relative contributions will remain the same, similar. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So something you guys might have heard is like green the grid and electrify everything. That takes a long time and it's very hard to do. So I think that in a lot of ways, the AI that is already developing, burgeoning, and then smart people who are willing to kind of experiment with it and plug it in creative ways is a really nice way to lubricate and accelerate something that has to happen. Because we've heard in other speakers, the amount of demand coming online for specifically clean energy is just going to grow. I think it's going to grow even faster than some projections already say. And so there have to be these like frame shift technologies that kind of help us keep a somewhat efficient market at play, right? When we look at these different blocks, so transportation, I don't think I need to explain too much like how much computer vision goes into like Elon Musk's cars. There's just a huge set of applications of AI, and it can be some of the more general, let me press a button and dictate to my car what I want it to do, to very, very specific. I'm going to use machine learning to optimize this certain sort of offload between storage and release of energy. Like you can use it at a lot of different levels of the stack of a really complex vehicle. It's really, I think, promising in terms of like battery, because a large problem we have is that we can generate a lot of renewables, but we don't always efficiently store them for when we need to release them. And so I do think more AI optimization there is good, both in a transportation sense and just energy in general. Industry is really interesting, and you have all these great examples. When I was working on concentrated solar, we were working mostly with mining companies, and that's something that's called like BTM, behind the meter. So they're not necessarily like plugging into the grid, being like, okay, let me just buy from the local utility a bunch of solar, clean power. They really need like a very remote solution with a lot of power to mine and extract minerals from the earth. So it's a pretty intensive operation. There's a lot of examples that I'm sure you've looked at with different companies where industry is just like so niche. There's so many nuanced, different problems we solve in the real world that are wrapped in so many layers of just like manual and also conceptual work. And then ag, people make different charts. Like some people say that agriculture is much bigger, but this is a very reputable source. A bunch of computer vision is what I've looked at mostly there. So we've done a lot of thinking, like how do we sense the real world environment and make sure that crops are like growing more effectively, more cost efficiently. And so I do think that there's just across all of these sectors, really nuanced, deep applications of machine learning AI, but then also really broad ones, like again, an organizational tool that helps you answer and ask questions in your company, right? Like that's gonna, across any of these industries, still probably make things 15% faster.
So just to structure the thought about if you are thinking about starting a new company, where should you put effort, right? So across all these different sectors, there are three major thematic topics. One is mitigation. So that means how do I measure better emissions and all the KPI that matters related to ESG. Then how do I reduce it? That means from how much I'm emitting versus how do I bend the curve, or how do I reduce? And then third is how do I then remove? That the end part is, well, still I'll be emitting. How do I remove it? How do I take out emissions from the environment? So there'll be technology around it. I'll talk about that later on if you're interested. And then it'll be adaptation, right? If I'm a banking company, I would try to see all my portfolio companies, like what is the risk in future as well today. So I need to predict, well, shall I set up, shall I fund a new infrastructure coming in the Bay Area, or I should do it in Florida, and where exactly? So predictions, and then how do I influence policymakers to make better policies and et cetera. So those are stuff. And then there are foundational research, right? Say, how do I do, conversation? How do I bring people into to this decision making? And then how do I make better policies and et cetera? And for each of these, you have specific use cases. Well, it's optimization that we focus on, like Eugenie AI focuses on optimization, bringing across industry, how do I bring optimization, and thereby the low-hanging fruits, which is, you can invest in newer kind of technologies, say, I want to do direct air capture, but first step towards decarbonization would be today, how much you're emitting, how do I reduce it at the first place? So that's where we focus on optimization, so there could be other things. So those are like, you can figure out what is low-hanging, what is important for you, and then accordingly execute. So that's how I would say.
It's very interesting. I read the other day in the Wall Street Journal that NVIDIA itself is using AI for two purposes. Firstly, they already have all the software for chip design, so the AI helps them reuse the software. Secondly, they take all the memos of the meetings, because there are so many software teams, they're all writing memos, so then AI helps you understand what every other team is thinking. So it's just a communication tool, like as Gracelyn said, and the little improvements add up a lot. So I really felt this, I think, and you're also saying the same thing, right? In some sense, you can make technological improvements in org design or technological improvements in the technology itself.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Like, just a couple other really easy to remember, easy things, I think, from a business perspective is like inputs and outputs. Like, if you understand a problem space, and I'm sure you all are very passionate about certain problems, like if you can be like, these are inputs that matter, and here is the output I would like to predict, it is very likely that right now there are tools that you can go leverage to design ML. And that did not, like, in 2017, that was not the case. I would say, get a team, cry a little bit, go yell at each other about how to design stuff. Now there's probably a lot of tools that you can kind of run through. And as long as you understand really, like, input, and then what is a good output, and how will I test the validity of that to solve my real business world problem, it's like an amazing time to be alive. And I was at Google I/O, 4 years ago, when they were like, it's an amazing time to be alive, and they were kind of introducing their tensor processing units, which is like a beefed up GPU, which is a beefed up computer, and like just the speed at which everything continues to evolve. People's tools are now judged not on does the ML underneath it kind of make sense and work, but like how good is the UX? And that makes it a really good time for business students to go hammer on the UX and be like, no, I knew my inputs, I knew my outputs, like I understand the business problem really well. Here's how this tool could be better. Here's how I want to tweak it. Maybe that becomes your first company, your second company, or maybe that just becomes like some pull requests for whatever, open source repo you're using. But it's just, there's a lot of really smart people in the space now, and the speed is pretty incredible.
So spoke about NVIDIA. I'll come back to where we are providing value for a semiconductor company. Obviously, I'm based in Bay Area, so a lot of semiconductor company we're working with Google as well. So, but I'll give you a sense of how AI can help, right, across the value chain. So how we are helping one of the we spoke about a steel company. So how we're helping them is we track their emissions using remote sensing data like satellite, right? Now, imagine the fact from satellite you can get to understand how much that company is emitting in terms of volume, what they're emitting in terms of composition of that emissions, how much sulfur dioxide, how much nitrogen oxide, how much other gases, methane and other gases, which are GHG gases. And then first biggest problem that they have is they have land sensors, in situ sensors, but those sensors are not correctly instrumented or not always reliable source of information because there will be maintenance needed and etc. So this is additional layers. By looking at remote sensing data, we kind of figure out from top-down view that how much actually they are emitting. And then we from sensor, we build that data provenance here. Is it true positive insight? Is it really how much they're emitting? Or is it due to, say, wind and etc., some of the emissions just, because it's not going to stand still there. So how much uncertainty that you have from your data, different types of data. And then figure out where exactly it is coming from, which processes, which machines not performing, and due to which they're emitting more, and what they should do next in order to reduce that problem. So that's coming. Now think of it almost like cobots, working with human to make them understand better about how to drive efficiency in their processes, at the same time be more responsible towards environment. That's one example. For semiconductor companies, what we're doing is they have a big issue about material waste, right? Because think of it, you are a PCB manufacturer, you are manufacturing printed circuit boards, which is nothing but thousands of smaller ICs fitted on a board, soldered, and there are robotic arms which is doing it. And due to mechanical process, there are lot of times the alignment is not right and etc. And due to that, the quality issues they just throw away, and that goes through recycling. Or even if you're not throwing, you have to redo that work. A lot of energy wastage that you are incurring on a daily basis. So we kind of help them to predict beforehand where exactly that kind of issues are going to come, and how do they prevent that proactively. Thereby, they can reduce their material waste, they can reduce their energy costs. So all of these are today possible because of technology. That's why I said we are fortunate that we are living through two different inflection point of AI and data engineering technology at the same time, climate tech. Yeah.
You know, the Andre Karpathy, who used to be the former Tesla AI chief, said that the hottest programming language is English because, and so one of the things Michigan has done is that it has given all the students and faculty ChatGPT-4 for free. And so do you have any suggestions on how students can just start playing with it? So we have all the access to the entire ChatGPT-4. So if you have any suggestions so that students who are a little bit intimidated can get started on something.
I will keep a really quick answer. The two things that I like to do with ChatGPT, I append keywords. So I like it to be brief. Sorry. Yeah, I like ChatGPT to not tell me too much. So I say things like concise as a keyword. I do think there should be better tooling so that you can set more preferences. It's a cute little startup that I recommend you guys build. I think probably 2 million people are trying to build that startup, but maybe you could be first to market. And I guess the other thing, just ask it stuff you're interested about, because you're not going to really be interested in AI for AI's sake unless you're applying it somewhere that you have an interest or you care about. And then you can start feeling out its awesomeness and its weirdness and where it might be lying to you if you kind of know a little bit better, because certainly fact checking and just making sure that when you're talking to an LLM, you're really trying to understand if it's actually correct is still very important at this stage. Wait, I don't know.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. No, I'd say you were sitting here, probably you're anyway using ChatGPT, trying to understand how do I ask a better question around climate and then ask us, and we're kind of that kind of stuff, you can do it anywhere to have more information about any topic, right? Whether it's climate or otherwise. You're going to build policies for the world. I'm sure that's why you are sitting in MBAs, and you will drive a lot of innovations within organizations and outside organizations. You will be responsible for changing those organizational behaviors and et cetera in the future. You can see that where in the world, what kind of organizational behavior is getting changed, and how you can take part in it. If you are not building LLMs, build application of LLMs, I would say. Today, I'll just give an example. I used to send any contract to my legal team before, and they used to take 7 days. Now I ask, these are the construct of my contract with the customer, give me a better way of constructing it. So it gives me something, and that I send to my legal associate, and she finds the final draft within a day, right? So a lot of efficiency that you can bring by using some of this technology to your workplace, in your day-to-day work. Try to be innovative anywhere you are innovators and in your approach, which can improve your efficiency and thereby bring more value to you and to the overall organization, in this case, university.
So one of the questions I had was, clearly technology is a very global kind of a thing, right? You have seen people from all around the world adopt it. So in your view, and I feel that technology has helped a lot of poor people, especially in India, cheap cell phones have really made the world better, but technology has also erected barriers. So in your work environment, how do you see technology and kind of human inequality colliding or helping?
Yeah, this is a great question. And since I said that we work with operational industry like manufacturing, and most of these manufacturing setups are those areas in the world which are vulnerable typically, right? And if you think of it, who gets impacted the most? The people around those manufacturing industries. So just to give an example, so work with few oil and gas companies in the past. They had tank farms where they store hydrocarbon, and they were ignoring the fact that these tank farms has, say, flexible roofs, and throughout the day they have been these tank farms are getting heated up, so they emit to the environment. That environment that emission finally goes to sea. The whole biodiversity, like the sea, and like it's in part of India, like Mumbai, which is like coastal region. Sea water gets spoiled, and then all the biodiversity in sea is getting impacted. Or the steel company. So I grew up in an industrial city myself. I had an asthma problem since my childhood. It's a steel industry area. And then realized that because of the steel plant, they were ignorant. I don't know what it was. Like they have been emitting sustainable particulate emissions to environment. That is one of the major cause of asthma. And so all the child they're growing up there, like they're having similar problems. So what we did in our innovation is first trying that problem. You got to have a mission where you bring technology to address some of the bigger issue that you have today in the society, whether you're driving policies, if you are policymakers, how do you bring policy in a way you construct a policy that can bring more equity than, by, dividing people, right? So, and it's not only you think about climate is a global problem. How do your solution, how do your approach is going to address obviously immediately your community, your neighborhood, but at the same time bigger society as well, like the most vulnerable one. So that's how you have to think through. And technology is something which is level setter. So today we can use it, but so you got to ensure that you, in your problem formulation, you bring all this topic and be conscious about it, if you can.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. I think also like staying a little bit skeptical. So I don't know if you guys remember the deep fake kind of like explosion and being like, oh my gosh, fake news and all of this stuff, both domestically and more globally speaking. My understanding is that a lot of the really regrettable and sad occurrences of just like mass poverty, mass exploitation do come with some form of like population control, right? So there are decision makers and structures in place that have allowed atrocities to happen or bad things to happen. And to some extent, that's because some messaging has been believed by some people to continue to organize the world that way or a part of the world that way. So that's very, very high level. But if we look at something like the upcoming election in the US, I do think it's just really interesting to stay with your level of education and ability to think about the full problem, really skeptical of what you're hearing as this is the thing to take for word, this is what's good for you, because I think in many instances, domestically and beyond, like different political ideologies can spring up and then, you know, they may not make the most sense, but if you have a lot of really great technology to make them make sense and generate lots of good propaganda, it's easier for them to take hold.
Thank you all. We'll take some of the audience questions now from Whova. So if you have any that you really want to be answered, please upvote them. The most votes are AI in itself is a concern for sustainability as there is large amount of power consumption for computation. How do we find the right balance of using AI to further sustainability while also offsetting its climate impacts?
Great question. Can I go? Take it? Yeah, so, you know, when you are innovating, you think holistically, right? So when you are innovating, you're building technology like algorithms, if you are not just applying but building algorithms, right? So how do you make sure that when you are running these deep learning models, you've got to be conscious about the fact that how much data is enough data, what algorithm that you are using, how do you leveraging existing knowledge if possible, so you don't reinvent well and then unnecessarily waste a lot of energy getting wasted in the process. Yeah. So you got to be conscious, and that's the reason why AI architect will become an important job profile in the future, where there are a lot of things which already being pre-built. There is a layer, and how do you build additional value on top of it so that without wasting? LLMs is one of the examples, right? So the base LLM model has been built. You don't have to build it again. And if you do it, this I would call silly. Let's build then domain specific on top of it rather than just like, okay, I will reinvent again. I will make my own LLMs. So no, this is obsolete. That business concept is obsolete. How we can reuse maximum is what you have to think through. Now, even if you do that, you will consume energy, right? Today, Google data center. Google is one of the most sustainable. I'm not promoting Google, but yeah. I'm not Google. I'm not sponsored by Google, but the thing is, we chose that as our platform because I was involved in some of the processes that they were and their visions. I spoke to their head of the sustainability. We were part of Google for Startup Climate Change. In that way, we have association. But in that process, I tried to understand how they think about energy usage behind their data centers, and realize that they have a mission to make sure that they are running those operations 24/7 on sustainable power. Have they achieved it? No. But are they going to achieve it? Yes. They are funding a lot of projects, energy projects, to ensure that their data centers across the globe running on sustainable power. So we then became conscious, yes, if I'm working with my provider, it has to be something like that whose mission and my mission is matching somewhere, and that's why it should be. So you all, most of you would become innovators and entrepreneurs. I would suggest, think about your mission and try to bring people along, in that mission, like where there is a value overlap. In our case, it is sustainability. It could be something else. And people will join you, and it becomes a movement. So it's possible. It is possible. It just you got to be conscious about those.
Yeah, the one other thing I would add is that right now, this might be controversial, but I think you should try and use whatever AI you want for the climate. Like, there's enough people who are going to try and use it for everything else that, like, I'm not particularly concerned that, like, climate applications are going to be the thing that, like, tips the scale and it's like, oh no, like, now I think there's going to be a lot of people making, like, really, really stupid businesses, and that, like, generally, if you're trying to reduce carbon, like, use as much AI as you want. That's just my personal take, but just for now. I hope that it becomes so saturated that I have a different opinion, but yeah.
That's fair. Another question we have is on distinguishing what's promising and what's a fad in this space.
I can riff for a second, and then can you just interrupt me when I say stuff that's dumb? So I have a lot of strong opinions about what is a fad. Generally, things to look out for is like, if someone super technical is just saying only jargon, and you're just like, what problem are you getting at? That's like, oftentimes, maybe it's not a fad, but like, they need your skills more than you need their skills. And it can feel like the opposite in those rooms. So just remember that. LLMs are great. LLMs definitely, there's actually, we don't need to get technical, but like there's not so much difference between like computer vision and like under the hood, there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens in a neural network, and there's lots of different architectures, but I do think there's like limits to how far we can go with just like pure language models in terms of like, again, you really need to understand your business problem. So yeah, I'm just repeating myself now, but just really understanding the business problem, and if you're talking to people and they really know what problem they're trying to solve, less likely to be a fad.
I would just put the question differently. I'm optimist that nothing is fad, okay? We need innovation. Innovation at first sight looks like, oh, this is too much, No, it's not. Unless you do that, unless you push the boundary, you can't bring, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you need to have that ability. But what I think is, the question could be, what is overhyped and what is underhyped? I would say climate is a topic where there is no one singular solution that you will possibly have that will solve the problem. It's such a big problem and such a worldwide problem that you need a lot of solutions, an ecosystem to have, which will have the ability to include all these solutions together, people, solutions, technology together. So the inclusivity that we speak about, climate is a problem which requires a fundamental problem that how do I bring things together and build that ecosystem, right, as a fundamental of it. So I would say, if I, being an optimization innovator, feel like, oh, like offsetting is a fad, right? So you kind of doing reforestation in Amazon, it's not going to solve the climate problem. Yeah, that could be, but still, it's a good thing for the environment. It's not a bad thing for the environment. It might not have equal impact of reducing that emission at source, but it will have some impact. It is not something bad. Now, how people are using, obviously, there will be organization, they will try to use it differently and whatnot. That's a different discussion. But I would say we need to have that mindset of, rather than rejecting an idea, let's think how I can augment that idea with my approach. And that should be the fundamental thought process that I believe in. I think overhyped is, I would say, offsetting. Underhyped is insetting, because it requires more efforts. People think, oh, I can buy some voluntary carbon offset credits from reforestation market. Let's do that. It's easier to do rather than who will change my processes and unravel all the data, and eventually it might become a lot of transparency about my business. Yeah, that's hard. Sometimes it is not the way today you are running business, but that is the most long-term will give you benefit. Within AI, I would say remote sensing is underhyped. It's going to be, you will see a lot of application of remote sensing. It's scalable, it's cheaper, easier to do it, and you have now a lot of satellites going around us, and you will have more data, more consistent data. You will see application of that on climate modeling, biodiversity, understanding emission detections, and understanding quantification of it, and beyond that also population, calculations and stuff like that. I'd say remote sensing, image processing is going to be, it's I would say moderately underhyped. You will see a lot of application of that, and overhyped, I would say. It's not overhyped, we need more technology, but like say solar related technology, we got to be, we'll see a lot more things coming from hydrogen, scalable, solar, and all of this bringing together a new plethora of renewable stuff. It's not only solar, it's going to be solar plus. You are going to see that as well in the coming days. And I'm hopeful in next 2 to 3 years, there's going to be a major shift in technology side where we'll see a lot more innovations coming in.
So we were talking a lot about industry. What are some of the risks associated with industrial processes becoming too dependent on AI?
Well, there's no risk. The risk could be, that's the risk. People who are sitting in those industries, they are having, that's overhyped risk. They think, oh, you are going to be the next evil Google, you will take my data and go away and say, okay, give me money, otherwise I will not give you this data. Well, there are companies, example of that. So that's why they want to, instead of buying, they want to build it, they want to protect, they want to build it by themselves. I would say that is wrong, because climate is, you can build it, you probably will not be able to achieve the equal efficiency in shortest amount of time. That's a wastage of everything, money, effort, energy, cost, everything. Rather than try to believe and trust, and everyone is not evil, and probably that's the way it is going to be. And we as an entrepreneur have to be conscious and responsible for that. If someone is trusting on you that, well, you are not going to mine my data, or you're not going to give it to my competitor, we got to stick to it, right? Irrespective of all the pressure that we see from investor, why don't you give that data to someone else? Maybe whatever you commit, you got to stick to it. So that's how we both can meet together, and that will make your risk de-risk it. But I will ask industry to be a little open and embrace innovation rather than thinking that, oh, I will protect. No, you will not be able to protect yourself no matter what. Technology is there. It is here. If you don't embrace, you're going to be obsolete. And that's why so many Fortune 100 companies became obsolete over the years. So that's how it is. That's how life goes.
Yeah, I think the one other thing is, like, are we talking about more like general AI, where we're having like so many complex human-like thoughts and decisions, orchestrating an entire mining process end to end, or an entire production facility for weeks on end without a human in the loop at all? So that's why you'll hear things like human in the loop, and I'm sure in a lot of your work, something that just makes sense, I keep coming back to understand the business problem, is like, what checks and balances do you have to say, well, there might be AI components in a bunch of this stuff, and I've looked at designs that are completely air-gapped, which means like no access to the outside internet. You can always put security measures in place. So I believe that, yeah, some of that like skepticism can be overhyped, but I do understand that as we get closer and closer to like the general AI as just like running the whole factory floor kind of feeling, that, oh my gosh, what if the AI decides to like reproduce itself instead? That's like the science fiction that may become reality in the next 50 years, but there's really like not so much to do. And I do think that these tools, when they're used responsibly, are still worth investing your time and energy into building.
Awesome. Thank you. Could you share some specific use cases of AI elevating our capability to solve climate change?
Yeah. I mean, there are many. So obviously, I'm a little biased about my company, how we are doing it. I think I've shared, but I'll talk about a few of my colleagues, like, as I said, ecosystem, right? Like, few of the companies are trying to build EV infrastructure on the go, right? So, for example, how I can convert a shipping container to an EV infrastructure. So few of my colleagues are building that. Or how do we finance some of the climate initiatives in an innovative way? So what will be the structure of those financing, especially where you are bringing to the vulnerable people, and how AI can play a role in that, understand where exactly there'll be more risk, or say climate change happening. So I need to set some on-the-go structure for first responder in specific area because there will be climate impact. So how do I finance those projects quickly before that happens? So those are kind of innovations that I have seen from my colleagues coming. And there are many. I mean, whether changing light posts to electric charging infrastructure in New York City, or people talking about how do I provide 24/7 renewable energy, help the companies like Google and Meta to procure them in a more sustainable manner with quality of services. So those kind of companies, I've seeing more and more, a lot of new innovations, different aspects of climate using AI is coming in picture. I can talk about more, but I would let Gracelyn to add more.
Yeah, one of the phrases that the founder of my previous company, he was like, let's replace atoms with bits. So I think that like materials optimization and just less raw materials used for most things, including like some of my former colleagues are now working on hypercars that use way less actual materials. Steel, a lot of things are very carbon intensive. So I think just like optimization in general is something that you work on quite a bit. We then have the saying like what's measured improves. And so the satellite imaging you're getting at, some of the research that came out of Stanford, I think like a year or so ago now, was looking at like how do we even get our hands around the emissions problem, because there's a lot of unreliable reporting in different countries, right? Some people don't really want to share what they think is actually being emitted into the air, highly polluted, not very well tracked. And so there's sort of proxies we can use AI and ML for to actually understand the problem better, which I think is one of the scarier, maybe less fun places to end the talk on. But I don't actually know that we as people really understand the true rate of change. And oftentimes we're seeing results in terms of global warming, temperature rise, and other compounded environmental effects that are not necessarily expected or worse than expected. And so just like measurement in general, it's not the funnest, oh, let's solve all the problems, but just understanding what's going on. It's not actually something we're like fully there yet as people on.
The measurement always makes an accounting professor very happy. So my colleague in Germany is starting a program. He's an accountant, so getting all German companies to measure emissions at source. So you have the same way they measure revenues and costs, they measure emissions. And the idea is that once all companies measure, you can get the entire German economy emissions, a good handle on that, and then you can create then you can have a carbon tax, credits, all of those are facilitated.
Yeah. Maybe I need his contact. I can help him. But anyway, so another aspect that I forgot to mention is there's a lot of innovation happening in recycling. I would ask you to use ChatGPT to look at it. So one of my colleague is building a company. I mean, it's a very interesting company. Recycling, like how fashion industry is one of the industry which commits a lot of seen by wastaging a lot of stuff, how they can recycle it better, how use computer vision to do it, understand what is recyclable and what is not, how to use that in a better way. So a lot of innovations, whether it's fashion industry, whether it's commodity industry, like how do you build your furniture, next furniture from recyclable stuff, plastic, recyclable plastic. So those are a lot of innovations happening. How much impact, we'll talk about that, but like say, definitely recycling is another aspect, another innovation gamut where AI will play a very important role in the longer term.
Awesome, thank you guys. So we are almost out of time, so I just wanted to ask if you have one last thought that you wanted to share with the group to wrap it up, that would be great.
Well, you are the future leader of climate. I will encourage all of you, thank you for spending the last 1 hour with us. If you want to take one message out of this room, I would say this is happening. Embrace it. And you are going to make you will change the world and have a mission in your life if you really serious about it. It's not only a career. It's definitely a good career, but it's beyond a career. It's a mission. If you relate to it, please join the force. And I'm an entrepreneur. If you are interested in knowing the entrepreneurship landscape, happy to spend time in whatever way I can help. I would be able to help. I have good network as well. I'll introduce wherever you want to fit. Yeah. Thank you.
I love that. My message is pretty similar, but for like the hardcore capitalists in the room, I think there's never been a better time to try and think about, like your grandkids, if you're prone to wanting a family, and also thinking about like gobs of money. Like there's just a huge need for renewable energy that's not going away. The timing is right. So if you're kind of on the fence, I could go into consulting, I could go try and do product at a tech firm, whatever. There's a long run aspect to thinking about maybe, sadly, a slightly lower salary at the outset, but really focusing on energy or climate because money follows need. And it is the problem of our lifetimes.
Okay, amazing. If we could give these guys a round of applause for spending some
Can I have
honestly, I haven't decided because
running into you.
Yeah, you too. Or later in the conference.
No, meeting that they have. Like, they're all.
yeah.
I didn't realize he was, so yeah. My husband's
That's awesome. But I'm like, we're here for this. You gotta go.
Yeah, I think that's what I was heartwarming. Yeah, and I also don't think I have enough of about it. Like I need something a little bit more concrete. I don't know. I'm more tangible of that, and I think that's like kind of what they were getting at too. Of like AI is like really important like its use cases. Not sure. I just have ideas.
I could go for some more.
Yeah, just powerhouses.
I don't know where you
Yeah. Is that the energy one? Can I say stick one? Not interested. But I think energy because I've been in the investment world and if I need to figure something out of that, I have a lot more faith in my ability to just be able to do that versus like energy. I'm like, well, that's still like things I'm gonna have to deal with and stuff. So yeah, fair. I just don't want to. I guess they should say I'm interested in but I think I just like, I mean, chat. I don't really know if they're gonna like speak or like networking to Eric. I saw that. He was there last night, and I knew that the jug was so crowded and so hot. It's not about many people. Semester schedule. Yeah, everybody was there. And like, everybody. Was that where they, that was their original? I think they went to Garage Bars. Garage Bars today for the, like, PC tech, yeah. Yeah. There were some different at the jug, and then there were also, mostly for me, kind of started there's trade-offs. And then, but I saw Eric, and I like Eric. He's a very nice guy. My sense of humor, my personality don't go that well together, and just every time I talk to him, I feel like I talk myself into trouble. And it's painful for everyone involved. Like, like other people, like Alex Reed one time was in a conversation, and he was like, afterward, he was like, that was bad. And I was like, I know. Like, thanks for doing that. So I saw him, and I said hi to him earlier, and I saw him, and I was like, oh yeah. He was like, wow, this is great. I was like, yeah, we're gonna go to Connor O'Neill's like now. He's like, I'll go with you. And I was like, wow, if Eric's looking at me as his lifeline, that's like, you know that this is, he's having a rough time. Yeah. I'm gonna go to the Tower. Also, welcome to thank you. Share Clueless. Yes, thank you. I don't know if that's what you're going for, but like, it's like not what I'm going for. Okay, yeah. You know, it wasn't like in my mind. I wasn't like I want to get an outfit that will make me look like Cher Horowitz. Yeah. But like, you know, I've not done this sweater with it before. I was a little worried. It's a little bit too like cotton candy themed, but or possibly Easter. Funny one. Yeah. I feel like these guys are gonna be here forever. Yeah. It's a weird. I don't know. That I think that's something to focus on. ESG and tech classes. I use my computer to solve my problems. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Coach. Go number of you. So you live in Atlanta now? They follow Atlanta a lot, and then I do for internship.
What are the focus areas? You can associate that focus area.
2013.
I have a good friend who only invests in mobility. I can introduce